final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
They have a turf field, so obviously you don't get any bad hops in there. You have to figure out what the speed of it is, because a lot of time those turf fields, based on what they put in there, the amount of sand, the amount of the rubber pellets, every field is a little bit different. So it's up to us on practice the day before the game to make sure we get a good feel for the speed.
Approach-wise, we're going to have to, be more of a gap-to-gap oriented approach offensively, and try to manufacture a little bit more in a ballpark that's pretty tough ballpark to hit in. So just got to make some adjustments, and hopefully it'll work.
The Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. It is NFL Draft Day 1. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, evening. Along with Phil Kornbluth and Professor Tom Hayes, Will Pelagic here with you, and producer Brian Leonard behind the glass. Love to hear from you today, 800-956-7266. We already had some calls before the show, actually, just kind of asking about the pulse of the NFL draft, which, again, begins in earnest tonight in Arlington. We'll talk about that. Clemson baseball victorious again over Presbyterian yesterday, 14-4. We'll talk about their weekend series in Virginia, South Carolina's weekend series in Vanderbilt. We hope to hear from Mike Morgan today for our Morgan on the Move chat today, and also a couple of other things in the kitty today. First off, I think where the draft is, I think from our perspective, we care about what Carolina does, and we care about what the local players are going to obviously be taken. I don't know if there's going to be anybody outside of Hayden Hurst who's taken today, but kind of what are you looking forward to seeing as the Browns are on the clock in Arlington, Corn?
All I care about is number 14. Or if they move up,
the Packers.
So all I care about is what number 14 does.
You're not into the quarterback intrigue with
it looks like
Allen.
It looks like it's going to be a line of quarterbacks taken early for the most part, and a bunch of quarterbacks taken in the first round. I mean, obviously, I'm interested in what Mason Rudolph does. Does he stay in the first round, maybe late? I'm interested in what Hayden Hurst does. Love to see him for all the hard work he put in and everything else that he's done. Love to see him get a first-round selection. From Clemson's standpoint, who we're looking at, Deion Kane, Darian O'Daniel, yes, maybe at some point in time. Now, that's a prelude to what the Tigers will offer up in the 2019 draft, where they will be prominent on the first day in the early picks with all those defensive linemen heading out. But
it's different.
That's a story for next week.
It's different, or for next year, at least from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, next year, yeah.
Yeah, that's really kind of what I'm focused on, because the fact that after the years that they've had, this is going to be a pretty, I would say, meek draft for them, just because of the fact that the seniors that they have on. I mean, you think about Taylor Hearn, he could maybe be a late-round pick. There really aren't that many people who jump off the page. Even Ray McLeod, who forewent the year of eligibility, I don't know if people are actually projecting him to go anywhere.
Well, this is the result of two things. Some of the talent that Clemson lost early in the last few years, guys leaving. I mean, for example, Deshaun Watson would have been a senior this year had he not left early. So they've had some singular guys do that over the years. So there's some attrition and small recruiting classes leading to small senior classes when they get to be seniors. So it's just sort of caught up with Clemson this particular year with the draft. But again, they'll have their payback next year.
And as far as Hayden Hurst is concerned, nice gentleman. But he's lived 2 lifetimes. I mean, you go to the professional baseball. They actually throw a curveball here. That thing's hard to hit. You know what? I'll go back to school, play football, and become a number 1 pick in the NFL draft as far as the first round is concerned. And I would truly tell you that if you're a fan of Hayden Hurst, you love to see what he can do in New Orleans. With all the weapons they have, the only thing that scares me about him being in New Orleans is they're in the same division we're in. And we'd have to cover the tight end now with Drew Brees throwing to him. So that would be an interesting thing. I've seen Mason Rudolph Corn today, at least one of the last mock drafts, going to New England.
And the weird thing is, I mean, you talk about Jimmy Graham, someone who's on your team who you know very, very well. That's somebody whose career basically got launched as a result of Drew Brees. that seems like a perfect fit for him. You want to maybe even thought that he could maybe stay closer to home and play with the Carolina Panthers, except for the fact that Greg Olsen just signed an extension and they don't want to necessarily logjam that position. As we mentioned last night, the Clemson Tigers victorious over Presbyterian 14-4. How about Sam Hall getting him some time here? He ends up getting a big hit early and helps Clemson on a night when they didn't necessarily have their full deck available to them. No Patrick Cromwell, no Kieran Meredith. And the Tigers, I know we've spent a lot on South Carolina over the last few days just because of their win streak, but don't overlook what Clemson's doing, Corn, because they're showing that, number one, they believe that they can host a regional and that they want to believe that they can make a little noise here.
Well, I mean, look, they withstood the mighty charge from Presbyterian last night, fell behind early. You know, PC, the slayers of USC, which obviously did South Carolina a favor. That was a baseball bat up against the head for the Gamecocks collectively to lose that game to PC and getting some guys healthy. So, yeah, Clemson is trying to make their end of the season statement that they are deserving of an NCAA regional. Of course, they've got to go to Virginia this weekend, but that doesn't look all that foreboding because Virginia has struggled to this point in the season. Surprisingly, I don't know exactly what have been some of their issues. I mean, they're batting .271. The ERA is not horrible at 3.75. Anyway, they're not winning a whole bunch of games, but it is up there at Virginia. The who knows what the weather's going to be like this weekend. Around here it's going to be nice. Not sure what it's going to be like up there. And this will be good opportunity for Clemson to further establish itself in the race there in the ACC and also help its hopes for getting that home field for the regional. And they've got Florida State coming up for 3. And believe it or not, I mean, Clemson is at the end of their rope with the ACC schedule. Only 3 more series this weekend, then Florida State, and then they wrap it up, in a beautiful place to finish your season at Pittsburgh.
Oh,
if they were playing the Pirates, I would say that's one thing.
Yeah.
But playing the Panthers, not so much. So you look at it and look where everybody's at. I mean, Clemson's got a chance to win all 3 of these series, should sweep Pittsburgh if they play well. Take 2 out of 3 from both Virginia and Florida State because it's hard to sweep good teams. So they should be in great shape heading into the tournament.
Just as long as, what was that, Corn, 2 or 3 years ago, Coastal gets in the tournament, maybe Clemson gets in there, maybe South Carolina sneaks in. Do not let another Oklahoma State come in here and just take over the state as they did that year. What they beat Clemson in the first round, then came to Columbia and did quick work of South Carolina, didn't they, on their way to Omaha that year?
Yeah, sure did.
Problem with Virginia is they've been getting guys on, but they haven't been getting them in. And the other problem is their power numbers are some of the worst in the ACC. They have just 18 home runs on the season. That is 3rd from the bottom. And the other thing, too, from the pitching standpoint, you mentioned their ERA. Opposing hitters hitting .240 against their pitching, which is, again, near the bottom in the Atlantic Coast Conference. We talked yesterday to Mark Kingston, South Carolina's head coach. If you missed that discussion with us, you can certainly find it at our website at SportsTalkSC.com. And also be sure to watch us on our Twitter at SportsTalkSC on Twitter via our Periscope feed. They will take on a Vanderbilt team, Corn, that had lost a 2 out of 3 series at Missouri previously. And when you think about what their home field brings, it's that turf field with the infield that a lot of these teams are kind of going to now with a grass outfield. It's a much different scenario than we've seen. They do it for durability, but they also do it because they get more true bounces.
Well, yeah, they do it because it helps them with maintenance. Because I was there a couple of years ago for a regional. I think their outfield is artificial as well. I think the whole thing is on rubber.
See, Missouri did something similar. They did
including the fake dirt, isn't it?
Everything.
Everything.
There's not a piece of dirt.
Missouri did an infield that is turf and an outfield that stays grass. That's odd.
The bonus for them is when it rains, it takes them about 20 minutes to get the field.
That's crazy.
Or I guess you call it a field, to get the carpet.
Do they still put a tarp out?
Well, when I was there, it didn't rain,
right,
so I don't recall. But
right.
I mean, when I went down there, I said, "Man, that's some funny looking brown dirt." And I went down there and walked on it. And I said, "This ain't dirt at all. It's paint." And yeah, they said one of the bonuses is that they can turn it around in a hurry in case of rain. So, but yeah, the bounces and the speed of the ground balls and the speed of the ball getting to the outfielders certainly will change.
We'll hear from Mo Muschamp next, and some disturbing news out of the Panther ownership box. We'll continue the discussion on Jerry Richardson and that whole situation next.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. A sentence that would be without context would send quivers down Clemson fans' spines. Dabo Swinney is headed to Alabama.
That would scare a few of them.
Except when you put the context behind it, in that he is going to Alabama to be inducted into the Alabama State Hall of Fame for sports.
You know, what's interesting is that, yeah, I get that, because you recognize people who grew up in your state for what they did outside your state. I mean, he's not going in because he was a great receiver at Alabama.
No.
He was on a national championship team, and he did some nice things as a walk-on, but he's going in because of what he's done at Clemson, a little bit at the expense of Alabama.
And the funny thing that Tim Beret, Clemson historian, put out was that he is the only person in that state's Hall of Fame that has played as a national champion and has coached as a national champion. So that's an interesting little tidbit there. He goes in with, among others, Braves pitcher Tim Hudson and former NFL wide receiver Terrell Owens. So it's a cool little Hall of Fame. But as you said, you believe that South Carolina State Hall of Fame is a tad more staunch for this year.
Take our Hall of Fame over the Alabama Hall of Fame. Let's see. We've got Ray Allen going in.
You mentioned Allen told you he's going to be here.
Well, Allen didn't tell me, but a friend of Allen's told me that. Yeah, who's been in communication with him, said that Ray Allen plans to be at the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies in a couple of weeks. Casey Manning be going in, all right.
Judge.
And Sammy Henson, great wrestler. Drew Meyer, standout baseball player. Sam Goodwin, all-around athlete from state. Kenny Washington, outstanding basketball player. Plus marathon swimmer Kathleen Wilson.
Plus with our Hall of Fame, we probably have more teeth in our Hall of Fame too. So
probably so.
See,
yeah.
See,
Well.
see, I can be provincial,
but less low blows than you just did.
Sorry about that. Again, the draft tonight. We'll talk a little more about it. We want to hear from Will Muschamp because he was speaking at the Gamecock Club. A little gathering in Myrtle Beach. Both coaches for South Carolina and Clemson have been canvassing the state, soliciting, among other things, love and money, if you will. Here's what Will Muschamp had to say about his projected first-round pick at tight end.
Well, I just worry about our guys and the guys that I've been around and coached and recruited and developed. And obviously, Hayden's a guy that I hope gets a first-round call, and certainly that'd be a monumental day for him. Taven Bryan's a young man that I coached at the University of Florida. Duke Dawson, another guy. Nick Washington. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that I had at Florida that are probably going to get drafted. So I'm really excited for those guys. Sky Moore had an unbelievable career at the University of South Carolina. Chris Lamons, DJ Smith, Jamarcus King, Dante Sawyer. All of those guys had tremendous careers. Taylor Stallworth, Corey Helms. I saw him in the weight room today. Alan Knott. So I want all those guys to have an opportunity to play on the next level. And I think in most situations, regardless of whether they're drafted or not, that really doesn't matter. It matters about what you do when you get on a team in a camp.
That is Will Muschamp. Is there a player of our local purview in your mind, Corn, who has in my mind, I think he's going to take a significant jump in value when he gets into the league and when he turns into a player for a team, just because I think he was underutilized in South Carolina. Is there a player who I think will make a bigger jump in their pro career than Hayden Hurst?
Well, I think Sky Moore is going to be a terrific NFL player.
Okay.
I think he's going to be a terrific NFL player, maybe as a safety, perhaps a linebacker, depending on which team picks him or who he signs with as a free agent. The guy is a tackling machine, and he has a work ethic bar none. He will never cause you a problem. He runs well. We see what he does in coverage, which is a bonus for a linebacker. I think he's going to be a terrific NFL player somewhere.
And all it takes is a player of comparable size to make it big and stay healthy. And that opens the door for another player. Everybody talks about his build. A great linebacker, and he's still improving, is with my Falcons and Deion Jones at LSU. And he's smaller than Sky Moore is, because he was drafted, I think he was only 219 pounds. And I think Sky Moore is closer now with the workouts at 225, 230. And he does something that you have to do at this level at linebacker now, and that's it covered the pass, and he's good at that. He's got great instinct.
Yeah, he had a 6'2", 226 weigh-in at the combine, 4.73 on the 40, and a 36-inch vertical jump and a broad jump of 117. Those numbers, again, without context, don't mean anything. But what I can tell you, having looked at the draft and hosted draft shows over the course of these years, those compare very comparably to somebody who can make the kind of high ceiling type jump on a team. And maybe it starts out in special teams, Corn. Maybe it's something where he gets with a team and, creates a niche and then finds playing time that way.
It's possible. I mean, the fastest way to an NFL career for a non-first round pick is through special teams. And he would certainly play that and play it well, I would think, as much as they let you play special teams anymore in the NFL. Yeah, I just think Sky Moore has got that it factor as a player. You don't lead your team at linebacker in tackles for 4 years, your entire career. One of 15 linebackers to do that in NCAA history without having a knack for being in the right place and a nose for the football. Man, he's got all of that.
Very drastic shift here. Sports Illustrated came out with a piece today concerning the Carolina Panthers and current and soon-to-be former owner Jerry Richardson. Basically, this victim or accused victim, alleged victim of the assaults that were brought about from the former, again, soon-to-be former owner Jerry Richardson, basically detail some of the things that he is alleged of doing and accused of doing. Decorum prevents us from going into at least some of the great details, but if you read the piece, you can see that they are not very they don't look upon Jerry Richardson very kindly, and it's unfortunate that this came to this, and it's unfortunate that we are sitting here still kind of talking about this while the ownership is still in flux, but not a good look for the Panthers. And we're again hearing from our friend Mick Mixon. We were going to have him on today to talk about the draft, but they've kind of told him to back off of the media appearances, and we certainly understand why. The full statement from the Panthers says that they started in December of 2017 with that internal investigation, and the new COO, Tina Becker, has worked on addressing those issues. Cohen, this unfortunately a sad end to a chapter for somebody who, again, prior to that point had been looked at publicly as not only a savior for football in this area, but somebody who had a stark and sterling reputation before that.
Yeah, absolutely. You hate to hear the details coming out, the whispers and the innuendo now becoming stronger and stronger as this story evolves and develops. And of course, Jerry Richardson is not a healthy man either, having gone through a heart transplant. So he's got to, keep an eye on his health as well, because the stress of something like this cannot be good for a man in that condition. But, if what he is alleged to have done is true and proven true, then, he's going to have to face that. And that's not going to be good for him. So it's a stain on the organization, no question about it. It's too bad that the whole thing, the Richardson family publicly in developing the Panthers as a brand and as a team. Father and two sons looked like a very strong unit that could not be broken. And when they paraded around the state of South Carolina campaigning for the team, it looked like a very good group. But over time, that all fell apart. The sons split. Unfortunately, one passed away. And now this has happened, and now they're going to be selling the team. The hope is that the new owner can come in and restore order and keep the team in Charlotte and keep the fans around here very happy, because the fans have done a great job supporting this franchise over the years. And the franchise has, in return, given the pro football fan in the Carolinas a lot to be thankful for, with some pretty good football. I mean, 2 Super Bowl trips in their relative young life is not bad.
And also, a caller can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Jerry Richardson may have become the first ex-NFL player to be an NFL owner.
I believe that's correct.
And so that's difficult to swallow. And then they've gone to the Fred Lane and the Ray Caruth stories, and I won't go into those. But this is a franchise that's had stains before and been able to clean it up. We'll see what happens on this go.
Welcome back to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. We would be remiss if we did not mention the fact that the Braves, red-hot Atlanta Braves, once again victorious today, 7-4. Ronald Acuna Jr., second Major League game, first Major League home run, has had a fantastic couple of days and provided a little bit of spark for the Bravos, and it provides a perfect segue to talk about them as we bring in our good friend Mike Morgan. Corn.
Morgan on the move here on Sports Talk, getting ready to do some baseball this weekend. Where are you heading?
Starkville.
Oh, beautiful Starkville. Nothing like it in the spring.
Vegas.
Got any good friends down there, Mike?
Well, the friendly staff at the Hampton Inn.
Yes.
Those are beautiful people there, and some restaurants. I think by now, over the course of many years and many trips, I know some of the servers, bartenders. So I consider them all friends and family at this point.
Do you know what they don't have, however? They do not have BP Skinner clothiers.
They don't, and that's probably why they're not dressed nearly as well as so many people in the Palmetto State and nationwide when it comes to Brent Skinner and Company. But I'll let you actually finish the read.
Yeah, people nationwide, except in Starkville. Their custom-made suits and accessories from Brent Skinner. Well, Brent doesn't do overalls, and he doesn't do blue jeans.
Or cowbells.
You said that.
Or cowbells.
Anyway, go
He
by.
could probably make a custom-made cowbell suit for somebody. For the right person, I bet he could do it.
Visit him in the Vista in Columbia, bpskinnerclothiers.com to set up an appointment. They also don't have the best people in the mortgage business. Founders Federal Credit Union, their mortgage team is more equipped than ever to help you with the mortgage process, whether buying or refinancing. Visit foundersfcu.com/mortgage to apply today. So, yeah, the Braves are, you know what? They're just kind of hanging around, losing some games here and there. Maybe they shouldn't to the Reds, but also winning some games. So, again, looks like they're going to make it through the opening month in pretty decent shape.
Well, the story today is Ronald Acuna, who hit a home run in his second game. In fact, Acuna and Albies both homered, which I think the combined ages of those guys, 20 and 21 years of age. That's the future. That, along with Freddie Freeman, and eventually some of these young pitchers will be kind of the nucleus of the resurgence of this franchise, as we've talked about, that clearly, whether they wanted to admit it or not publicly, was in rebuilding mode the last couple of years. But Acuna is a guy we've heard about really for the last 18 months or so, pretty heavy, and he's just a different kind of prospect. Everybody's got, their number one, number two, number three prospects in their respective farms. But this was a kid that just stood out so far and above anything that the Braves have had in their farm system for a long time. The preseason rookie of the year by many folks. Of course, he had to wait a few weeks before he got the call up, but it's there. He's not just some minor league phenom. He tore it up in spring training. He has dominated every level of baseball that he has been in, and I have no doubt that he will be a success story at this level as well.
Well, shifting gears, looking at the game you're doing this weekend in Starkville with Mississippi State, they look like Lazarus. This is a team they thought was left for dead, and now they are tremendously white hot. They win a game that doesn't count against Ole Miss in a comeback fashion, I guess, in the bottom of the ninth inning. And what South Carolina is doing after they got some health, Mike, those two teams that have come back from the dead, do they have a chance to parlay this into moving forward and being successful and maybe sneaking into the NCAA playoffs?
Yes and yes. I think yes on both counts. The series that I'll be working will be Mississippi State against Texas A&M. So with A&M, you have another, high RPI, high-ranked team that can only enhance your resume if you win the series. And just to double back on what State's been through this year, of course, you lose Brent Rooker, who won the Triple Crown last year in the SEC. And then your coach gets fired early on in the season with kind of a scandal that's well publicized by now. So that's a lot for any team to go through. They stumbled out of the blocks, and now I think they're starting to find themselves again. And that win against Ole Miss, it does count in terms of it is a win, counts in all the metrics. It just doesn't count as a conference game, as you pointed out. But I think that they certainly have a chance. And South Carolina, more to the point of what I'm sure a lot of your listeners are thinking about, is definitely a team now with that sweep over LSU. I thought it was the best weekend of the Mark Kingston era. They are healthy, and that's all you'd hope for with that team, is that if they could just get that lineup back. I never had any doubt the lineup would be competitive. Not the likes of Florida or Arkansas, but certainly competitive. My only concern was the pitching, and the pitching has also risen to new heights. A lot of those young guys now are pitching much better than they did earlier. So I think South Carolina's in the discussion now. How they finish is obviously going to be the key on the whether getting in or not. But when you think of how doom and gloom it looked a couple of weeks ago, and everybody was so down on everything, I don't think anybody was even thinking about it. Now, all of a sudden, very much in the conversation. And I think that would be, regardless of what would happen and once you get there, I think that would be a huge accomplishment just to get back to the postseason in year number one under a new head coach.
What do they have to do in your mind, Mike, to not only stay in that discussion, but I mean, I don't know if I'm looking for a number, but what would put them in the NCAA tournament in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about where you get in trouble with numbers is, and everybody kind of shoots for those same magic numbers, whether it's total wins or conference wins. I look at it differently. I think the committee is more in tune with where you finish in league play, and I think that's going to be the difference maker. Chances are they're going to finish right around 9 or 10, and at that point, do you have enough where, first of all, it would certainly help if you win a game or two in Hoover at that point. Some people are saying the SEC could break the record this year and get 11 bids. I personally don't think that's realistic. I think it's a 9 or 10 bid league, which is great. That's going to lead the country per usual. But I think asking more than that is a little bit far-fetched. But I think certainly South Carolina, if you finish, let's say you finish 9th in the conference regular season, win a game in Hoover, and I think you're in.
Talking with Mike.
The schedule is.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, go ahead.
Just reset you.
Oh, you're good.
Talking with Mike Morgan.
I like the reset.
Morgan on the move. So you were in California last week. You saw the Dirtbags play. But my question is, we're so tuned into the ACC and the SEC baseball. What about from the West when we get to the tournament and to the Supers and towards Omaha? Who do you see coming out of the West, let's say, or maybe the Midwest? I saw ESPN was televising Purdue and somebody last night. Do you see anybody emerging from those regions to be counted towards a national championship run?
Oregon State and Stanford will definitely be in the conversation. They don't have to apologize to anybody for what they have. They can't help the fact that the rest of the West Coast is not particularly great this year. They can't help the fact that the Pac-12 has been a disappointment for several years running now, top to bottom. I guess you could say the Pac-12 is trying to be consistent because they've been a disappointment in football. They've been a disappointment in basketball. So now they've maintained that consistency in baseball where there's just not enough good teams. And it's hard to explain because there's so many great players out there. And the Big West, the conference we were alluding to last week with Fullerton and Santa Barbara and Long Beach State, they've had a team in Omaha the last 5 years. So you could make the argument the Big West has been a better league than the Pac-12, and that shouldn't be the case, but it has been. But Oregon State and Stanford, to answer your question, are easily head and shoulders above anybody else in that part of the country.
Yeah, look in the RPI. Stanford's number 1 at 31-5. Oregon State is number 7 at 30-6. So you nailed those two. Okay, enjoy Stark Vegas. Put your earplugs in. I don't think you made anybody mad at Mississippi State back in the day. I think it was only Arkansas where they wanted to run you out of town. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, Arkansas.
I need the story on that.
Just for the record, it was not an indictment on Arkansas. It was two bozos that were in front of me, in front of my crowd mic, where they were basically being a nuisance for 4 hours where nobody could enjoy the broadcast because they wouldn't pipe down. So eventually they piped down.
Yeah. Hey, Mikey, thank you, man. Enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay, guys.
That's when you take the crowd mic and just hit them in the head.
It was so funny. The Gamecocks had to battle from behind. Those guys were giving the crew a hard time. They hit a home run to kind of win it. And Mike goes, put that in your pipe and smoke it, Arkansas.
Recruiting next.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Welcome back on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Phil's recruiting report comes your way in just a moment. We wanted to update you on the goings-on at the SEC Men's Golf Championship that's going on in St. Simons Island, Georgia. LSU currently leads at 3 under par after a 4 under par 276 for their team today. South Carolina has not had a good first couple of days after shooting 8 over par yesterday, 7 over par today for a 15 over par 2 days so far. They're 12th out of 14, only better by 2 strokes over Mississippi State, by 8 over Missouri, who is in dead last. That'll make you happy, Corn. LSU, Vandy, and Bama are the top 3 teams. Vandy 2 shots back at 1 under par. Alabama is at +3. And in golf news today, Corn, we found out Tiger Woods is going to play at Wells Fargo for the Quail Hollow Championship there.
Yeah, he likes playing there. He loves that course. He's played there many times. Boy, that's going to be one packed golf course in 2 weeks. What a great couple of weeks coming up. I mean, I'm not really into what's happening in New Orleans this week. They've got a little team thing going with walk-up music.
Yeah, you're not a fan of that.
Not a big fan of walk-up music in golf. You know, rest in peace, Arnold Palmer. Please don't hear that. But the next couple of weeks, you got Charlotte, and then you got the Players. So that's going to be a lot of fun coming up the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and also we wanted to mention, we didn't get this on the program yesterday, but Coastal Carolina wins the Sun Belt Golf Championship, so they get themselves the automatic bid there for the NCAA tournament. And if you missed it yesterday on our program, for the NCAA Women's Golf Regionals announced, South Carolina is headed to San Francisco, and Clemson, Furman, Coastal Carolina, and College of Charleston will play in the Tallahassee Regional of the NCAA Women's Golf Tournament coming up here later on in May. Right now, it's time to get some recruiting in from the Corn, some updates on some players, and I understand you talked to somebody who's got a big announcement coming Friday.
Yes.
Clemson interest.
Yeah, of course. Linebacker Keith McGuire, Malvern, Pennsylvania, will announce at noon on Friday he's already committed to the school and told us yesterday that he did so yesterday morning. He called the winning coaches and formally committed from a final list: Clemson, Notre Dame, Ohio State, North Carolina, Alabama. And he got the decision down to 2 before he picked the winner. He says he feels great, 100% in and excited to get it done and to be able just to grow from here with the school and the coaches and build better relationships and bigger relationships. And he said that the staff was very excited and thrilled to get him on board. So the announcement's coming Friday. He'll have something at his school, but there'll be people there to tweet it out. He visited all the schools on his short list, including 2 trips to Clemson. He said the decision came down to where he felt the best with the coaches and the players. And so, for my opinion, my feeling from talking to him.
Corn call?
Corn call. I think it's Clemson. He let it slip a couple of times. He said down there a couple of times in our conversation. You know,
he is from Malvern, Pennsylvania.
From PA, yeah. If he had said over there, maybe I'd be thinking Ohio State or Notre Dame, but he said down there. So feel pretty positive, Clemson. And, of course, the Tigers offered his teammate, offensive tackle Jake Hornibrook, whose brother is the quarterback at Wisconsin, and he said he was very excited for Hornibrook to get that offer from Clemson. Now, speaking of potential commits, tight end Trayvon Kenyon, 6'4", 210, Monroe, North Carolina, visited earlier this week by USC tight ends coach Pat Washington. He was there for a spring practice. He attended 2 USC home games last season. He also visited the Friday prior to the spring game. Plans to make a decision next week. He might visit USC one final time Saturday before making up his mind. He said he's tied up with 2 schools. Then he said, well, actually 3. And he says he's been to those schools. He wants to go back to South Carolina to get a feel for it one more time and make sure he doesn't miss on anything. He'll make his decision based off of those 3 schools. He did not name the other schools, but he did have a top 5 of USC, North Carolina, NC State, Louisville, and Virginia Tech. He says he does have a good relationship with Washington, who likes him as a guy that can play attached or split out, and he will make his decision public on Twitter before Wednesday of next week. Clemson on the short list with defensive end Derek Hunter of Fort Myers, Florida, with Florida State, Florida, Georgia, Miami, Penn State, Tennessee, and Texas A&M. He was at Clemson earlier in the month. Kind of a surprise here, considering they've already got a quarterback committed, but Clemson offered another 2019 quarterback, Graham Mertz, 6'3", 205, Mission, Kansas.
What would be the philosophy behind doing that?
I don't know. He's been committed to Wisconsin since last October, unless they were expecting some transfers out of the current quarterback room and don't want to be caught shorthanded if they can get this guy. But he's been committed to Wisconsin since last October. This guy's a prototypical passing pro-style quarterback, 3,684 yards, 45 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Some other offers are Notre Dame, Alabama, Oregon, Tennessee, and Texas A&M. USC was on the West Coast and offered a couple of teammates from Gardena, California, 2020 defensive back Mason Williams and 2021 athlete Anthony Beavers, who's got to sign with South Carolina for the obvious reason. Dorman offensive lineman John Gillott was offered by West Virginia. USC target defensive back Chris Steele was offered by Georgia. USC target linebacker Tyrone Hopper. A little bit of a disappointment here for USC, a Gaffney native who lives in Roswell, Georgia. He committed to Florida today over USC. He was basically down to those two. Tight end Hudson Henry of Little Rock, Arkansas, was at Clemson today. Basketball, USC target 6'3", Devontae Bandu of Hutchinson Junior College in Kansas is taking his official visit to Baylor starting today. I would imagine that once he's done, he'll have a decision between USC and Baylor. And 6'3" combo guard Xavier Johnson of Arlington, Virginia, according to PrepHoops.com, will officially visit USC this weekend. He's a former Nebraska signee, but he got his release, and he averaged 18 points per game last season.
You don't want him. You want to know why you don't want him?
Why is that?
You went to my rival high school.
Oh, is that right?
You went to Bishop O'Connell. You don't want that kid.
Anyway, check out our recruiting online all the time, 24/7, 365, 366 in leap years. And it's at, of course, Sports Talk. Yeah, Brian, there's 366 days in a leap year. Brian's like, I've never heard of that. At SportsTalkSC.com and on Twitter, use the hashtag ST Recruiting to take you right to it.
It's because each revolution around the sun is 365 and a quarter days. And so once every 4 years, they have that extra day to make up for that. Did you see where Cameron Kelly put out a nice little tweet, kind of once again chiding others about his top 8? And Kayvon Wallace goes, my boy trying to have a little fun. And he says, yes, sir, bro. Back to Kayvon Wallace. That guy, the other night, when we were waiting on his, quote, announcement, really kind of put us in a tizzy. But it's Auburn, Clemson, Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Virginia, Wazoo.
Correct.
Now, why in the world? Wazoo is like one of these things is not like the other, man. Like, all these schools are kind of in the same area, and then Wazoo kind of thrown in there at the end. Could
be a relationship with a coach, somebody he knew from a camp, previous contacts.
Pirate? He wants to play for the Pirate?
I don't know. I mean, listen, Leach has he has a brand. He has a big name for an offensive guy. I don't know about the defense, but there might be somebody. He might have a teammate who's out there. All kind of reasons.
There seem to be a lot of people on his timeline who are funneling him toward Penn State. That would be something that, again, I would look at that and say, man, that'd be the only one I'd be nervous about if I was Clemson.
Well, it's only natural for a kid from Virginia to have a lot of Penn State interest, and they recruit very well. And James Franklin, his staff, do an excellent job. And there's another defensive back, Tyler Randolph, that Clemson is recruiting, who also is looking hard at Penn State. So, and he's from the Connecticut area, so no surprise that somebody from the Tidewater area would have a hard push towards Penn State.
I grew up around a lot of Penn State fans. I didn't really care for them.
Well, the guy you talked to about looking at Wazoo, maybe it's because he watches, ESPN and their pre-football Saturday and see that logo at every stop.
At the college game day.
Pay a guy, pay somebody to show that logo everywhere they go.
They call it Old Crimson, I think is what they call that old flag there from Wazoo. And I hope you enjoyed recruiting. ST Recruiting is the hashtag of where you get it. We have an update every night. We have updates here on the show as well. And we'll continue to talk about the draft, which comes up here in less than an hour. We'll have the money coach, Fran Halloran, in our second hour. We'll hear from both Monty Lee and Brad Brownell. Brownell's got some interesting things to say about the College Basketball Commission, and back to more of that discussion about what we heard and honestly what we didn't hear from Condoleezza Rice and her cohorts yesterday on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network.